This is the royal secret they don't talk about. Before Diana, there was the older sister who dated Prince Charles and literally ushered the future king's bride into his life, Lady Sarah McCorquodale. She held the royal fate of Britain in her hands and then she vanished. She's Prince William's godmother, a key figure always in the background. Yet her story is the ultimate testament to power in silence. This isn't just about stepping aside. It's about the cold-blooded choice to become the sister in the shadows, a pivotal player who traded the crown for anonymity. Why? And what price did she pay for her silence? Imagine the late 1950s and early 1960s in aristocratic England. It was a world of grand country estates, horse riding, debutante balls, and a very particular kind of upbringing. The Spencer family, one of Britain's oldest and most prominent noble families, lived a life steeped in tradition and expectation. Their ancestral home, Althorp, was a sprawling testament to centuries of history, filled with art, heirlooms, and the whispers of generations past. It wasn't just a house, it was a living museum, a 90-room behemoth set on thousands of acres, where the portraits of ancestors stared down from the walls, silently reminding each new generation of the weight of their lineage. Now, it's important to remember the Spencers weren't just wealthy landowners. They were deeply woven into the fabric of British royal history, having served monarchs for centuries as courtiers, politicians, and confidants. Their bloodline even traced back to the Stuart kings, giving them a lineage that was in some ways more purely English than that of the Windsors themselves. This wasn't just a family, it was a dynasty in its own right, and that brought with it a unique set of pressures. It was into this world that Sarah Spencer was born in 1955, the eldest of 4 children who had survived to adulthood. Her younger siblings were Jane, Diana, and Charles. Growing up at Althorp meant navigating vast, echoing corridors and playing hide-and-seek in rooms that had hosted kings and queens. For a child, it could be both magical and intimidating. There was a sense of duty ingrained in the very fabric of the place, a silent expectation to uphold the family name. The Spencers themselves were known for a certain temperament, a blend of aristocratic reserve, a stubborn independent streak, and a deep well of emotion that sometimes bubbled to the surface. Sarah, as the eldest, was the first to inherit this complex legacy. But even before the famous divorce, there was a quiet tragedy that haunted the Althorp nursery. Before the birth of their eventual male heir, Charles, an earlier son John, tragically died just 10 hours after his birth. In the unforgiving world of the aristocracy, the primary duty of a wife was to produce a male heir to carry on the title and estate. This loss was not only a personal heartbreak, but a dynastic failure, and it cast a long shadow, placing an unspoken pressure on the daughters who followed. The Spencer children's early lives, while outwardly privileged, were also marked by a profound sense of instability. Their parents, Viscount and Viscountess Althorp, later Earl and Countess Spencer, had a tumultuous marriage that ultimately ended in a highly public divorce, an acrimonious divorce when Sarah was still a teenager. This wasn't just a quiet separation. It became known in society circles as the War of the Spencers. Her mother, Frances, fell in love with another man and left the family home. For the children, this wasn't an abstract legal event. It was the visceral memory of their mother's car crunching down the long gravel driveway for the last time. The ensuing custody battle was brutal and deeply wounding, with Sarah's own maternal grandmother, Lady Fermoy, testifying against her own daughter in court, an almost unthinkable betrayal. In the end, their father won custody, an unusual outcome for the time, and the children remained at Althorp, a grand house that now felt emptier than ever. This event deeply affected all the Spencer children, creating a bond forged in shared experience and a fierce desire for privacy in later life. For Sarah, as the eldest at 13, the departure of her mother and the subsequent emotional fallout would have been a seismic event. She was old enough to comprehend the scandal, the whispers, and the pain etched on her father's face. In many ways, she was forced to grow up overnight, becoming a sort of deputy mother to the younger ones. She was the one who had to be strong, to be the responsible one, when the adults in her life were consumed by their own war. This period undoubtedly shaped her protective instincts and her pragmatic, somewhat tough exterior. It was a shield she built to protect not only herself, but also her siblings. She witnessed firsthand the glare of public scrutiny on her family, a valuable, albeit painful, lesson that would influence her choices years later. While her sisters would eventually navigate the choppy waters of royal life, Sarah developed an early appreciation for discretion and a quiet resilience. She attended West Heath School, the same boarding school Diana would later attend. West Heath was known for shaping the daughters of the upper class into suitable wives. But while Diana struggled academically, finding her place in sports and acts of kindness, Sarah was reportedly a more capable and confident student. She was more academically focused and already displaying the headstrong, assertive personality that would define her youth. She was, in short, the archetypal capable elder sister, laying a path that her more sensitive younger sibling would follow, yet one she herself would ultimately diverge from in the most dramatic way imaginable. Now here's where our story takes a fascinating, almost cinematic turn. Before Diana Spencer became the Princess of Wales, there was another Spencer sister who caught the eye of a certain Prince Charles. Yes, you heard that right. Lady Sarah Spencer and Prince Charles had a brief romantic involvement in the late 1977. This isn't just a juicy tidbit. It's a pivotal moment that underscores Sarah's proximity to royal life and her unique position within the Spencer family narrative. Let's set the scene. It's 1977. Prince Charles is approaching 30, and the pressure on him to find a suitable aristocratic virginal bride is immense. The press follows his every move, speculating on every woman he's photographed with. He is, for all intents and purposes, the world's most eligible bachelor, and the weight of that title is beginning to feel heavy. During a house party at Windsor for the Royal Ascot Racing Week, he was reacquainted with Sarah Spencer. With her fiery red hair and an even fierier personality, she was vivacious, witty, and outspoken, a stark contrast to the shy, doe-eyed girls, often pushed in his direction. You have to understand, Charles was often drawn to women with spirit and a strong personality, women who could make him laugh and challenge him intellectually. Sarah, with her quick wit and worldly confidence, fit that bill perfectly. She wasn't intimidated by him, and that was immensely attractive. Their courtship was casual, taking place during a period when Charles was actively seeking a suitable bride. Sarah, known for her outgoing personality and sharp wit, was seen as an eligible companion. They shared a sense of humor and a love for the countryside. For a few months they were an item, spotted together at polo matches and country weekends. It was during this time that Charles was invited for a shooting party at Althorp, the Spencer family seat. And it was there, in a plowed field, that he was formally introduced to Sarah's 16-year-old sister, Diana. She was home from boarding school and by all accounts was still a shy, slightly plump teenager, very much the little sister in the background. Sarah even famously told a journalist at the time, "I introduced them, I'm Cupid." While often attributed to her dry humor, this statement in hindsight carries an almost prophetic weight. At that moment, she was the star, and Diana was merely a spectator in her orbit. Let's pause on that scene for a moment. A future king walking the grounds of Althorp with one Spencer sister, while the other, the future Queen of England, watches on, barely noticed. Sarah was in the driver's seat of her own life, confident and in control, completely unaware that she was facilitating a meeting that would alter the course of the monarchy forever. There is no indication of any rivalry or jealousy on her part. Rather, sources suggest she was a proud older sister, showing off her impressive boyfriend and her family home. But the romance between Sarah and Charles was destined to be short-lived, and its ending is perhaps the most revealing story about Sarah's character. The relationship imploded spectacularly after Sarah gave a shockingly candid interview to journalists James Whittaker and Nigel Nelson. Meeting them for lunch, she spoke with a frankness utterly unheard of in royal circles. Now, why would she do this? Was it naivete? Was it a subconscious act of self-sabotage to escape a future she wasn't sure she wanted? Or was it simply the raw, unfiltered honesty of a Spencer, unaccustomed to the cage of royal protocol? The truth is likely a combination of all three. She wasn't playing a game, she was just being herself, and herself was fundamentally incompatible with the palace. She allegedly confessed to having had thousands of boyfriends, a clear piece of youthful hyperbole, but a disastrous soundbite, admitted to a past struggle with anorexia, and declared she wouldn't marry Charles if he were the dustman or the King of England. When the article was published with the headline, "Sarah says, I won't marry Charles," the palace was horrified. Prince Charles was reportedly furious, showing her the article and telling her, "You've just done something incredibly stupid." The relationship was over instantly. It's a crucial moment. This public gaffe taught Sarah a hard lesson about the media. They were not her friends. The experience was likely humiliating, but it was also liberating. It proved, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that she was not cut out for the stifling, restrictive life of a royal consort. She lacked the practiced discretion, the willingness to self-censor that the role demanded. It speaks volumes that just a few years later, when her younger sister Diana became engaged to the very same man, Sarah's reaction was not one of jealousy, but of deep concern. She knew better than anyone the pressures Diana would face. She had stood at the edge of that world, looked into the abyss of public scrutiny, and had been unceremoniously pushed away. Now she had to watch her more sensitive sister willingly walk into it. Her short-lived romance with Charles wasn't a failure, but rather a stepping stone, laying the groundwork for the most talked-about royal marriage of the 20th century. For Sarah, it was a chapter that quietly closed, allowing her to forge a path that, while connected, was distinct from the one her younger sister would famously walk. It was a painful but ultimately defining experience that solidified her desire for a normal life, long before the rest of the world understood just how abnormal life as a royal could be. While Diana's life unfolded in the full glare of the global media, Sarah remained a constant, steady presence in her sister's private world. After Diana's engagement and subsequent marriage to Prince Charles, Sarah didn't seek the limelight that naturally accompanied her sister's newfound status. Instead, she chose a path of quiet support and unwavering loyalty. She understood the pressures Diana faced better than almost anyone, having experienced a taste of it herself. Her own brief, fiery dance with the press had given her a unique insight into the gilded cage her sister was about to enter. This insight wasn't just theoretical. It was born from personal experience, giving her advice a weight and authenticity that few others in Diana's new circle could offer. To truly understand their dynamic, you have to look back at their childhood. Sarah was the eldest, the clever, more academic one, who after their mother left took on a mantle of responsibility. Diana was the sensitive, emotional one who craved affection and reassurance. This dynamic, the practical protector and the vulnerable younger sister, was set long before any prince came into the picture, and it would define their relationship for the rest of their lives. In the early days of Diana's royal life, Sarah served as one of her ladies-in-waiting, accompanying her on official tours. This was a formal public role, but her true value was private. Imagine the complex swirl of emotions for Sarah. Just 4 years earlier, she was the one on Prince Charles's arm. Now she walked a few paces behind her little sister, watching her charm world leaders and captivate nations. There must have been a profound sense of sisterly pride, mixed with a certain personal irony. But more than anything, it gave her a front row seat to the crushing reality of Diana's new life. Imagine being on one of those grueling foreign tours, a young woman in her early 20s, scrutinized by millions. Having your older, more worldly sister by your side, someone who knew you before the titles and tiaras, someone you could roll your eyes with in the back of the car, would have been an invaluable comfort. Sarah was not just staff, she was family, a grounding presence in a world that was becoming increasingly surreal for Diana. One of the most touching, yet less discussed aspects of their relationship was Sarah's role as a confidant to Diana. When Diana struggled with the immense weight of royal expectations, the isolation, and later the breakdown of her marriage, it was often to her sisters that she turned. Her other sister, Jane, was in a terribly conflicted position, as her husband, Robert Fellows, was the Queen's private secretary. This meant Jane was caught between loyalty to her sister and loyalty to the crown. But Sarah had no such conflict. She was free to be unequivocally on Diana's side, making her a crucial and safe outlet. While official accounts and documentaries tend to focus on the more dramatic public aspects of Diana's life, the real support happened in the quiet moments, the late-night phone calls, the secret lunches, and Diana's impromptu escapes from London to Sarah's quiet farmhouse in Lincolnshire. The image of the most famous woman in the world turning up in a headscarf, desperate for a normal cup of tea and a chat with her sister, says everything about the refuge Sarah provided. Sarah was known for her direct, no-nonsense advice. While others might have tiptoed around the Princess of Wales, Sarah was the sister who could tell her the unvarnished truth. If Diana was spiraling into despair over a negative press story, Sarah was the one to cut through the tears and say, in effect, "All right, that's enough. What's the plan?" She offered a dose of Spencer pragmatism when Diana's world felt like it was spinning out of control. An emotional detail often overlooked is how Sarah supported Diana through her bulimia struggles. It's believed that Sarah was one of the few people Diana trusted enough to confide in about her eating disorder in its early stages. This level of intimacy speaks volumes about the depth of their bond. Having battled her own issues with anorexia in her youth, as she so candidly admitted, Sarah could offer a unique kind of empathy. She understood the psychological torment in a way few others could. She recognized the illness not as a cry for attention, but as a symptom of immense inner turmoil and a desperate need for control in a life that was utterly controlled by others. Sarah didn't just offer sympathy. She offered practical support and understanding, helping Diana navigate an intensely private battle while living a relentlessly public life. This wasn't a role for the faint of heart, requiring immense discretion, empathy, and a fierce protective instinct. The sisters' relationship wasn't always perfect. No sibling relationship is. There were periods of distance, particularly when Diana's fame reached its zenith, and her circle of advisors and friends grew. At times, Diana's understandable paranoia led her to push people away, even family. There was reportedly a significant falling out when Diana felt that Sarah had been too involved with books being written about her, feeling that private family matters were being shared. These were real frictions, born of the extraordinary pressures they were under, but the fundamental bond remained unbreakable. When the chips were down, the Spencer sisters closed ranks. Sarah was there for Diana not as a princess, but as a beloved sister in need, offering a safe harbor in a storm of public scrutiny. This quiet devotion, away from the camera flashes, is a testament to the enduring and complex power of their sibling connection. No historical narrative is without its what-ifs, and Lady Sarah's story is centered on one of the most tantalizing questions in modern royal history. What if she had married Prince Charles? This isn't just idle gossip, it's a debate that touches upon character, temperament, and the very nature of the monarchy at the time. It's a sliding doors moment that could have changed everything. On one hand, proponents of this alternate history argue that Sarah, with her more robust and worldly personality, might have fared better within the rigid confines of the firm. She was older than Diana, more experienced, and less emotionally fragile. She had a university-level education and had lived and worked on her own in London. Her outspoken nature, while being her downfall in the courtship, could have been an asset once inside the system. She might have been better equipped to handle the palace intrigue and the manipulative games of the courtiers, viewing them with a cynical eye rather than a wounded heart. Perhaps she wouldn't have been as easily overwhelmed by the isolation that so plagued Diana. Her pragmatism and sharp intellect might have allowed her to carve out a more manageable role for herself, one less defined by public adoration and more by practical duty. She may have treated being the Princess of Wales more like a job, one that she did with Spencer diligence before retreating to her private life. However, there is a compelling counter-argument. The very qualities that made Sarah seem more resilient, her candor, her independence, her refusal to be anything other than herself, were the exact qualities the monarchy of the 1970s and 80s was not prepared to handle. Her infamous interview was a clear sign that she would not, or could not, play by the unwritten rules of never complaining, never explaining. A marriage between the fiercely independent Sarah and the deeply traditional Charles could have resulted in a different kind of crisis, not one of public pity and heartbreak, but one of open rebellion and clashing wills. It's possible her outspokenness would have been a constant source of constitutional headaches, leading to a much earlier and perhaps more acrimonious split. Consider for a moment the comparison with another Sarah who married into the family a decade later, Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York. She too was vivacious, modern, and outspoken, and she struggled mightily against the constraints of the institution, ultimately crashing out in a blaze of tabloid scandal. Sarah Spencer may simply have been the original Fergie, but one who was weeded out before she ever made it to the altar. But let's introduce the most crucial element into this thought experiment, Camilla Parker Bowles. Charles's heart was always with Camilla. Diana's tragedy was compounded by the fact that she was deeply in love with her husband and devastated by his infidelity. Would Sarah have been? Or would she, with her pragmatic nature, have entered the marriage with more open eyes? It's conceivable that a marriage between Charles and Sarah could have become a more continental-style arrangement, a partnership of duty that allowed for separate private lives. Perhaps Sarah's resilience would have led not to a happier marriage, but to an earlier, more civilized, and less globally scandalous separation, sparing the monarchy the soap opera that consumed it in the 1990s. Furthermore, the public's relationship with a Princess Sarah would have been fundamentally different. The world fell in love with Diana's vulnerability, her doe-eyed beauty, and her palpable emotional need. She was a fairy tale princess, a canvas onto which millions projected their own hopes and dreams. Sarah, with her sharp wit and confident, almost imperious air would never have inspired that same kind of devotion. The public might have respected her, but they may not have loved her in that same all-consuming way. This lack of a people's princess might have kept the monarchy more remote, less humanized, but also perhaps less volatile. This leads to the other point of debate, which revolves around her retreat from public life. Was it entirely a personal choice born of a desire for normalcy? Or was it a form of self-preservation, a necessity after her early, bruising encounter with the press? Some might suggest she was subtly sidelined, a cautionary tale for other aristocratic hopefuls. However, all evidence points to a conscious and deliberate decision, reinforced by decades of family experience. The Spencers' private lives had been public fodder since their parents' bitter divorce. Sarah saw the pain it caused firsthand. Then she felt the sting of media ridicule herself. Finally, she watched from the closest possible vantage point as the full, terrifying force of global media attention was unleashed upon her sister, with ultimately tragic consequences. Her choice to live a quiet life in Lincolnshire wasn't a retreat based on one incident. It was the culmination of a lifetime of lessons. It wasn't a strategic withdrawal, it was a strategic advance towards a different, more authentic kind of happiness. The debate remains because it highlights the fundamental tension at the heart of the royal family, the clash between individual personality and the demands of an ancient institution. Sarah represents the road not taken, a tantalizing glimpse of a history that could have been. In the end, her story is perhaps not one of failure, but of a profound, if accidental, success. The success of escaping a fate she was never suited for and building a life of quiet dignity on her own terms. After Diana's tragic death in 1997, Sarah stepped into an even more poignant role. The world was convulsed with a very public grief, a tidal wave of flowers and tears. But for Sarah, the loss was intimate and devastating. It was the loss of her little sister. In the immediate chaotic aftermath of the crash in Paris, it was Sarah who, along with her sister Jane and Prince Charles, flew to Paris to bring Diana's body home. Imagine the atmosphere on that flight, the stifling silence, the shared but unspoken horror. For Sarah, she was flying towards her sister's body, alongside the man she had once dated, the man whose marriage to Diana had been the source of so much pain. It was an impossibly complex and heart-wrenching situation. Arriving at the Pitié-Salpêtrière hospital, they were confronted with the stark clinical reality of the tragedy, a world away from the palaces and public stages they knew. It was a moment that required a fortitude few could comprehend, and it encapsulated her entire relationship with her sister. Private sorrow thrust into the public domain, a burden she shouldered with immense dignity. At Diana's funeral, a service watched by billions, Sarah stood before the world and delivered a reading. She chose the poem Afterglow, a deeply personal and telling choice. Often misattributed, the poem, which begins with the famous line, "Turn again to life," was written by the British author A.P. Herbert. It speaks not of dwelling in sorrow, but of filling the emptiness with joy and carrying on, urging the bereaved to complete these dear unfinished tasks of mine. In a service marked by raw, emotional moments, like her brother's searing eulogy, Sarah's contribution was one of quiet, forward-looking strength. It was a message that felt perfectly aligned with her own pragmatic, resilient nature, a quiet plea to honor Diana through action, not just tears. She became one of the executors of Diana's will, a responsibility that cemented her place as a guardian of her sister's memory and legacy. This was not merely a legal title, it was an intimate and profoundly painful duty. It meant being one of the people responsible for sorting through Diana's personal effects at Kensington Palace. Imagine the heartache of walking through your sister's rooms, surrounded by her scent, her clothes, her half-read books, and having to catalog a life cut short. Sarah had to handle Diana's private letters, her diaries, and her most treasured possessions, all while processing her own grief. This task required a level of emotional discipline that is hard to fathom, protecting her sister's privacy, even in death. More profoundly, she became a significant maternal figure in the lives of her nephews, Prince William and Prince Harry. She was already Prince William's godmother, a role she took seriously. But after 1997, her presence became vital. She offered a stable and loving connection to their mother, a touchstone to their Spencer heritage. A visit to Sarah's farm in Lincolnshire was an escape from the formality of royal life and the constant weight of their public roles. There, they weren't the future king and his brother. They were just her nephews. They were in a place where they could be surrounded by the earthy normality of the countryside and the straightforward affection of their mother's family. Sarah's approach to this difficult period was marked by her characteristic discretion and quiet strength. While the world mourned Diana publicly, Sarah worked tirelessly behind the scenes, ensuring Diana's wishes were honored and her sons were supported. She was present, but never intrusive, a comforting anchor for William and Harry, who deeply valued their Spencer family connections. She attended important family events, from school functions and graduations to their weddings and the christenings of their own children, always with a gentle smile and a supportive demeanor, a constant reminder of their mother's side of the family. Her presence at Prince Harry's wedding to Meghan Markle in particular was noted as a deliberate and touching inclusion, a clear sign from Harry of the deep and abiding respect he has for his mother's family. An example of her protective nature can be seen in the various projects and tributes dedicated to Diana's memory. Sarah, alongside her siblings, was instrumental in establishing the Diana, Princess of Wales, Memorial Fund. She served as its president, a demanding role that involved managing a massive influx of public donations and navigating the complexities of charitable work. It wasn't always smooth sailing. The fund faced controversies, particularly over the licensing of Diana's name and image for fundraising products. Sarah was at the center of these difficult debates, trying to balance the need to raise millions for Diana's chosen causes with the imperative to protect her sister's memory from crass commercialization. Her leadership was steady and driven by a singular purpose: to ensure that any initiatives undertaken truly reflected Diana's philanthropic spirit and values. She wasn't seeking credit or recognition. Her motivation was purely to honor her sister and preserve her true essence. This commitment to safeguarding Diana's memory, particularly for her sons, highlights Sarah's deep loyalty and her profound understanding of Diana's enduring impact. She understood that her role was to be a bridge between the past and the future for William and Harry, connecting them to their mother's spirit through shared family bonds and memories. This role continues to this day. In 2021, when the statue of Diana was unveiled at Kensington Palace, Sarah was there, standing shoulder to shoulder with her brother and sister, watching as Diana's two sons revealed the tribute. It was a powerful visual. The siblings who grew up with her and the sons who lost her, united in a single moment of remembrance. It was the perfect embodiment of the quiet, constant, and protective role Lady Sarah McCorquodale has played for decades. While deeply entwined with the royal narrative, Lady Sarah McCorquodale has steadfastly maintained a remarkably private life. After her brief romance with Prince Charles, she married Neil McCorquodale in 1980. It's crucial to note the timing here. This was a full year before her sister's engagement to the same prince. This shows that Sarah had already made her choice, already set her course for a different kind of life, long before the full force of the royal spotlight descended upon her family. Her wedding was a reflection of this choice, a lovely, traditional upper-class country affair celebrated with friends and family, not a global television event watched by 750 million people. Her choice of husband was, in itself, telling. Neil McCorquodale was a farmer and a former officer in the Coldstream Guards, from a solid landed gentry family, but not a high-profile aristocrat. Their marriage, now having lasted for over 4 decades, represented a step towards the very life Sarah craved. Stable, grounded, and away from the flashbulbs. She moved to a farm near Grantham, Lincolnshire, and embraced a quieter, rural existence, far removed from the royal palaces and the intense media glare. This wasn't a reluctant move. It was a wholehearted embrace of the life of a countrywoman. You can picture it, a life dictated by the seasons, not by the social calendar. A life of muddy Land Rovers, long walks with the dogs, and deep involvement in the local community, the village fete, the parish council, the things that form the bedrock of English country life. It was a world she could control, a world where she was known as Sarah McCorquodale, wife and mother, not as Diana's sister. Her life after Diana's death continued in this vein. She has dedicated herself to her family and her community. In a nod to the Spencer family's tradition of public service, she served as High Sheriff of Lincolnshire in 2009. This is an ancient non-political office appointed by the monarch, representing the sovereign in the county for matters of justice and law and order. Let's just think about the beautiful paradox of this. Here is a woman who deliberately stepped away from the center of royal life, yet she takes on a role that makes her the Queen's official representative in her own county. It is a role steeped in tradition and duty, but performed at a local level. This choice is fascinating. It shows that Sarah isn't anti-establishment. She simply prefers to contribute without the fanfare. It's a profound statement of respect for tradition and duty, but on her own, manageable terms. She breeds pheasants and partridges, pursues her love of fishing, and enjoys a life centered around family and country pursuits. Her children have followed her example, living quiet lives and staying firmly out of the public eye, but they have done so while still honoring their unique heritage. In a deeply poignant and symbolic moment in 2018, her daughter Celia wore the Spencer tiara at her wedding, the very same magnificent tiara that her Aunt Diana had worn on her own wedding day. And sitting there among the guests at that small country church were Prince Harry and his new wife Meghan. That single image speaks volumes. The continuation of family tradition, the quiet passing of a legacy from one generation to the next, and the enduring, loving bond between Sarah and her royal nephews. It was a perfect encapsulation of the life Sarah built, honoring the past, but not being imprisoned by it. There's a subtle yet profound irony in Sarah's life. She was the first Spencer sister to date Prince Charles, the one who inadvertently opened the door to the royal court for her family, and yet she was the one who consistently shied away from the very spotlight that consumed her younger sister. Her decision to live a life away from the public gaze wasn't a retreat born of bitterness, but rather a conscious choice to prioritize her family, her privacy, and her own well-being. She saw firsthand the devastating toll that fame could take. While Diana's life became a global cautionary tale about the destructive power of celebrity, Sarah's life offers a different, quieter lesson. A lesson in how to navigate proximity to immense fame while retaining one's own identity and sanity. She navigated the unique challenges of being the sister of Princess Diana with grace and quiet determination, never trading on her connections, but always honoring them. Her existence offers a poignant counterpoint to the relentless scrutiny faced by public figures, a testament to the quiet strength found in choosing one's own path. She is proof that it is possible to be a part of an extraordinary story without letting it be the only story that defines you. Lady Sarah McCorquodale's story isn't one of grand public achievements or headline-grabbing controversies. Instead, her significance lies in the quiet, steady influence she exerted within her family and the enduring loyalty she showed to her sister. In a world that often measures success by titles, fame, and public recognition, her life offers a powerful redefinition of the term. Her legacy is not written in newspaper headlines, but in the stability she provided to her family in times of crisis, and in the private, peaceful life she successfully built and fiercely protected. She is a powerful example of how one can be intimately connected to world-shaking events, yet choose a path of dignity, discretion, and quiet service. What can we learn from Sarah McCorquodale? Her life reminds us that true strength often lies not in seeking the spotlight, but in the unwavering support of loved ones, the commitment to personal values, and the courage to forge one's own identity despite external pressures. She provides a humanizing lens through which to view the extraordinary lives of the Spencers and the Windsors, reminding us that behind every public narrative are complex family dynamics, personal choices, and quiet acts of love and loyalty. She is the anchor in a story often depicted as a tempestuous sea, and an anchor, by its very nature, does his work unseen. It isn't decorative, it's functional, heavy, and holds firm beneath the surface, providing stability when the waves are crashing. That was Sarah's role for her sister and later for her nephews. Her role as godmother to Prince William and her continued presence in the lives of both William and Harry underscores the vital importance of family connections and the enduring bonds that transcend status and circumstance. For two men who lost their mother so young, their aunts and Spencer relatives have provided a crucial link to her memory and her side of the family. Sarah represents a touchstone for them, a living link to their mother's vibrant spirit, her wicked sense of humor, and her family's rich history. In a modern age obsessed with fame, spectacle, and the constant sharing of one's life online, Lady Sarah McCorquodale stands as a quiet testament to a different set of values. Her life is a masterclass in the power of privacy, a reminder that a life's worth is not determined by how many people are watching. It is a legacy of integrity, grace, and an unbreakable devotion to those she holds dear. So, as we close this chapter on Lady Sarah McCorquodale, we're left with a deeper appreciation for the unsung heroes who navigate history from the sidelines. Her story isn't just a footnote in the royal narrative. It's a testament to the profound impact of quiet strength, unwavering loyalty, and the deliberate choice to live a life defined by personal values rather than public expectation. The fiery, outspoken girl who told the press she wouldn't marry a king learned a powerful lesson early on and used that knowledge not to become bitter, but to become wise. She masterfully built a life of privacy and purpose, proving that happiness isn't always found in a palace. Sarah reminds us that some of the most meaningful contributions are made away from the glare of the cameras, in the steadfast love and support offered to family, and in the quiet dignity of a life well lived. She truly is the sister who, by stepping into the shadows, cast her own unique and lasting light,